Hello and welcome at Book Lovers Companion. My name is Edith and the chattering teacup sends her regards. She's suffering from some back pain and she's again, making sure everything is fine with our books. Let's hope it is. We keep our fingers crossed. And our CEO is recovering from some heart condition, so she also has to make sure everything is fine on that end. But here with me is a charming guest, and he doesn't have the right to remain silent, dear listeners. Hello and welcome, author, lawyer Douglas J. Wood. Hello, Douglas, and welcome at Book Lovers Companion. It's an absolute pleasure to have you, and we are here to talk about book number 2, The Shakespeare Killer, which came out in June 2023.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And it's the second book. The first one was Blood on the Bayou.
Correct.
Yeah. What can you tell our listeners about your book?
The Shakespeare Killer is the sequel to Blood on the Bayou, and it's a series that follows the life of a FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, criminal profiler as he attempts to track down serial killers. So it's a murder mystery and thriller and that type of genre. It relies a lot on historical events. I try to intertwine in the Shakespeare Killer. I try to intertwine some of the writings of Shakespeare, some of the themes in Shakespeare, because I was always a fan of Shakespeare in college and afterwards. So it's fun to weave those kinds of things into a book. And those who are real Shakespeare addicts will see things in the book that are sometimes subtle and sometimes not subtle, but are drawn out of Shakespeare. So it's the second in the series, and in this one, in the Shakespeare Killer, it's about a killer who is killing defense attorneys. So what's not to like about that? So it's in the reasons and whatevers are in the book. But this chase that the main character, Chris DiMeglio, the FBI profiler, in chasing this killer, he not only is in the United States, but he ends up in Italy in chasing this. And a lot of people don't know about the international jurisdiction that the Federal Bureau of Investigation has, how it cooperates with local police and Interpol. So there's a lot of that in there to make sure that all of that's accurate. And he ends up, in Italy and in Rome and in Florence. And so those who are from Europe and have been in Italy, whatever, will see some very familiar places that take him on his hunt to find his serial killer. So that's it in a nutshell, the book.
And we spoke before I started the recording about your visits to Europe in general and Vienna. Were you tempted while writing the book to expand on his journeys out of Italy and other European countries, or did you think, it would become too much for the readers?
That's a great question, Edith. If I had my way, my novel would have probably been about 8,000 pages, and I would have gone from country to country chasing every serial killer known, because I've been blessed with the privilege of having traveled throughout Europe many times. And it is, the fascination as a writer to try to relive that in words and describing to readers just what the richness of the area is very tempting. So for my readers, in one sense, some of my book is a bit of a tour guide, of my memories and experiences in traveling in this particular one, in Italy. But who knows? Maybe my next one will be Austria, then Germany, then Czech Republic, then who knows where, but it's a fascinating idea. I'm writing the third in the series now, but unfortunately that one is not going to be involved in Europe, but at least not now. Maybe you've planted a seed that I'm going to have to change it and get some European touches in there.
Oh, please do, maybe. And what
I wrote another book years ago called Dark Data. It's a thriller about using social media to influence governments and bring financial terror, et cetera, et cetera. But that was an opportunity for me to use all my experiences in Eastern Europe and in Russia and the travel there that I've done. So you may have hit on something I hadn't realized, that maybe I've got a bug to write about places I've traveled, and I should maybe, get into that business too. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. You just mentioned the possibilities for the FBI to investigate internationally. So what does that involve? I mean, I think it's mentioned also in your book the possibility for your agents to carry weapons. So
Yeah, the
how
way
is that negotiated with the countries?
yeah, the FBI, and a lot of people don't realize the FBI has offices all over the world, and the offices liaise with the local police or the federal agents, or whoever their sort of counterpart is, and they work out what they're allowed to do. And depending upon the country, there's more latitude than others. In Italy, for example, the FBI liaison office there works with the Carabinieri, the state police, and they are allowed with their permission, if they need to, if they want to carry weapons and to do investigations, but they have to do everything in cooperation with the local authorities. So they're not independent, but they're quite broad in the powers that they have, the investigative powers that they have. The interesting thing that I talk a little bit about in the book is the difference in what we call due process for accused individuals in Italy versus the United States, and how the rights of the police are more limited in the United States in terms of interrogation and retention and whatever than they are in Italy. And it differs country to country within Europe too.
Yeah.
So I talk a little bit about how the FBI in a foreign investigation actually it can be more aggressive overseas than they could be in the United States. So there's interesting sort of stories behind all of those kinds of things and how they work.
Absolutely. There's also this part in your book, or this interesting background in your book, where the FBI decides they had a little bit of polishing their, let's say, their PR, and they use their main character as the poster boy for the FBI. Is that something that did happen? Did you use that from real life?
No, to a degree. What the FBI does do on occasion is do public relations releases about a particular success that they've had. But in recent years here in the States, the FBI has had a lot of bad publicity. They've been accused of all sorts of politicization, of being manipulated, whatever you want to call it. So I looked at that, and the idea came to me that, well, one sort of subplot within the book could be an effort to take this very successful FBI profiler and put him out in front to try to get a better reputation or success for the FBI. And he's reluctant to do it because he's a dedicated agent. He's not a public speaker. So he's not happy about doing it. But it does, in the end of the day, as you know, by reading the book, it does get him into relationships and into situations that I hope the readers find interesting to read and to learn a little bit about how the FBI works.
Absolutely. Because I did watch this show about the beginning of his department, BAU, the people who write profiles or look into the minds, of serial killers or killers. And the show was called Mindhunters, and it was very fascinating. And we had a conversation with a forensic psychologist once, and he said, this series was really good because it shows the beginnings and what they did, and it's based on a book by the FBI agent whose name I can't remember, who wrote this book and who started this whole department.
Right, and it wasn't that long ago that it started, and the unit, BAU, the Behavioral Analysis Unit of the FBI, is started out just from a perspective of finding serial killers, but now it's expanded into taking psychological profiling to the next degree, and they work very closely with local authorities, with international authorities. So they become a very important part of the criminal investigative tools that the FBI and others have. It also comes with a great deal of controversy because there are many critics of behavioral analysis in criminal investigations. They feel it is no more accurate than the lie detector test, and that they make assumptions and they extrapolate from some vague facts trying to establish X or Y. But that said, there are certainly many anecdotal instances where that unit has been integral in catching a serial killer. The frightening thing is, and the United States is number one in this by far, is the number of serial killers that are in this country at any active moment. The FBI is, as insane as this sounds, the FBI believes that at any given time, there are hundreds of serial killers in the United States, either dormant or not discovered. When you look at all the unsolved murders in the United States, and obviously the unfortunate thing about our country is that we lead the world in serial killers and murders and violent crimes by far. I mean, that was even close to us. A lot of the so-called cold cases of unsolved murders are in the many thousands, and the FBI speculates that that many of those are the results of serial killers that were simply never caught. And in doing the research on this book and the previous book, I had the opportunity to talk to FBI profilers and agents and doing my research. And the more you learn from them, the more sort of paranoid you might get in the sense of how much is out there. But they always reminded me that you're probably more likely to get hit by a lightning strike than you are anything else. So they hear that, but you sit there and go, well, what if I'm the one who gets hit with lightning strike? I don't think that's a very good statistic. But anyway, the whole issue of profiling is fascinating to me because it's as much an art as it is a science. And that's what I try to talk a little bit about in the book is the art side of how, and plus it's also in many instances, as is always the case, any police person will tell you a lot of what they do and their success is based on luck. They just happen to see something that they missed, or the powers of observation and all that kind of stuff. It's a fascinating field.
I think in Austria we call it Inspektor Zufall or detective. What is it called? Zufall is coincidence.
Ah, yes. Well, the profiler will tell you that they don't believe in coincidence.
Yeah, I know.
That's their philosophy. They have a whole sort of perspective on the logical connections, and they believe everything has a logical connection and nothing is a coincidence. That's sort of what they have to get in their mind. By doing that, what they do is they observe things more efficiently, and they don't eliminate things so quickly because they believe that every single little nugget of evidence is going to lead to someplace else. So they're very meticulous. And that side of it is perhaps the scientific side, but I think the art side of it is their ability to see two things that seem totally unrelated and find a relationship between the two. So that's why I think they are so fascinating as individuals to analyze.
And your main character, Chris, our main FBI agent, is he based on a specific character you have encountered during your research, or did he come from your mind?
Yeah, he's kind of an amalgamation. I've probably talked to a dozen FBI agents, in terms of the last two books that where Chris DiMeglio's character came about. And so the thing that always struck me about folks in the FBI is they have a certain level of confidence, but then when you sort of dig a little deeper, they're just like anybody else. They've got flaws and they're conflicted, and they have lives that can also often destroy their personal lives because they're dealing with such horrific things, particularly serial killers. Yeah. They see things that nobody should see, as do many police officers. So it's that kind of character that I tried to create, which was an amalgamation of a number of folks I met. And I try to give him his own personality. What I do when I write a novel is I figure out who my characters are, and then I write miniature biographies of them. Like it might be 25, 30 pages. Most of it doesn't get in the book, but what it helps me do is remember the character, so that I keep them true to who they are, and also don't make the mistake of changing their eyes from blue to brown. So it's you have to. It also makes sure I keep the details on their physical self as well.
So does that mean you are, when you write or before you write, you would call yourself a meticulous planner?
Yeah, most of the, I mean, it takes me, for me, because I'm not all that disciplined in terms of sitting down and doing it as an orderly fashion, but it takes me about a year
Mm,
to write it. 70% of that time is research.
mm,
And I love doing the research and making sure that I'm absolutely meticulous in terms of describing a place, or even down to, the way a restaurant looks, the menu, as you see in Shakespeare Killer, we
mm.
have them at a really nice restaurant in Florence. I've been there. I've looked at the menu. I'm very careful about that because one of the things I love about readers more than anything else is they will catch your mistakes in an instant,
Oh, yeah.
and they'll point it out. And I'd rather have a review that says, I didn't particularly like this book, as opposed to someone saying, he got that wrong. That didn't happen, or it didn't look like that, or it didn't, whatever. I mean, because that's all on me. That's my mistake. If you don't like what I write, okay, you don't like what I write. I mean, there's nothing I can really do about that. But in terms of making those kinds of mistakes, that's one of those things that drives me nuts. So you're right. I'm very meticulous in my research.
Mm. And the idea of having the press working together with the FBI, which happens in your book, is that also something you came up with, or could that happen? Let's say it could happen, not entirely imagination.
I took it a step further by embedding an actual reporter in with an FBI agent. They embed reporters in combat zones, as
Yeah, yeah.
in wars and stuff. So I thought, well, why would there not necessarily be a reporter embedded there? And so I talked to some reporters who had been embedded in combat situations, and what were the rules, and what could they talk about, not talk about, what report, whatever. So I took that idea and I put it into the book, in the Shakespeare Killer. the that's sort of the creative side of it. The reality side of it is that the police and reporters work hand in hand all the time.
Mm,
You'll see a reporter on TV talking about a crime that they're reporting on, or whatever it is, and they have their police sources, and likewise, police have their sources. So they work a lot more hand in hand, behind the scenes, the press and the police, than people often realize. When we think about it, they're both fact finders. They're both
mm,
investigators in many ways. They got the same kind of thing that they do.
yeah.
So it's a natural alliance for them to have, but they don't publicize it much because they don't want to. It's something that they would rather not have out there as being a common thread. So I don't know. I can't say how common it is, but I do know that the police and the press work together quite often. The level of it, we can speculate on,
Mm,
but I think it's pretty significant.
mm. And the idea, you touched upon it when you described the book itself and the plot of your book. How much fun was it for you personally to kill all those defense lawyers?
I laugh because I've written like 7 thrillers at this point, and I joke to people, say, it's very cathartic for me because I get to kill a lot of people I don't like. And so I used to, early on when I wrote my first novels in the thriller category, I used to raffle off the right to be a character, and the money would be paid over to charity. And so I did that for 3 or 4 years, and every time the person won, I said, "Well, would you rather be a hero or a villain?" They all wanted to be villains, and I would say, "As you understand, if you're a villain, I'm probably going to kill you." And they go, "Yes," and I go, "And do you understand I might kill you in a really horrendous way?" "Yeah, good, do it." I go, "Okay, fine." so so many of the victims in my books are the names of people who I've known for many years, and have a little fun creating them and putting them in the books. It's sort of the inside. Well, many authors do that. It's the kind of the inside joke that the authors have, and often they're asked, where do they get the names from? And in my case, often the people I know. And the other place I get my names, and this may be the first time I've admitted this, so you're getting a scoop on this one. The other way I get it is the names of towns when I'm driving along the highway. I'll see that there's an exit, coming up, and the two names of the towns work as a name. So I'll use names of towns, So in fact, at one point I toyed with the idea of doing a book where every one of my characters was going to be named after towns. And I had this long list of towns and stuff that I had. And I try to match it, but I'm not quite there yet. And maybe the next book I'll do that. That'll be a bit of a challenge for me. Those are the two sources of my names. I either make them up with people I know, or I use town.
Mm. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Interesting way to find names. Maybe I should try that one day. It's a bit harder here.
Yeah, Europe would be a lot harder. I don't know that it would work. Well, Chris DiMeglio, his name is a person who's a neighbor of mine. I just like the guy, so I made him the character.
Okay. That's why he is the hero then. I see.
There you go.
You said you enjoy research and you plan meticulously. And how hard is it, or how do you decide what should go into the book and what is just background information for yourself and for your writing process?
And that's a really good question, because you can get caught up in your research and then, put way too much in the book. One of the great lines of one of my editors said to me one time was, because I put a lot of detail about a particular thing in one of the books. And she said to me, if they really want to know that, they can look it up on the internet. You're slowing down the book.
Mm.
It reminds me of Tom Clancy, the great author who I love. But you read one of his books, and like The Hunt for Red October, when you're done reading that, you could build a summary. There's so much detail in it. But that's kind of a different approach to it that most readers don't like. So the challenge you have and I have anyway, is culling out from all the research the parts that really make the story, as opposed to give me the confidence that I'm writing something that's truthful and accurate. So that's sometimes a blurry sort of area to figure out. So the other thing that is one of the greatest real benefits or the satisfaction I get out of this is I discovered early on as a writer that people will talk to you openly. And I just figured when I first started writing that I would call somebody up and say, I'm a writer, I'd like to talk to you about something, that they go, I don't know who you are, go away. The exact opposite happens. So I've had conversations with some of the most fascinating people over the years who just open up. And I want to put so much of what they tell me into the book, but you can't, because it's not relevant, or it slows it down. But it's fascinating people I've had the opportunity to talk to and get to know. So it's that part of the research is a lot of volume, and you've got to, you made the point exactly. Culling out that volume and figuring out what's important for the story is why I have editors. And that's what editors do. They can be brutal at times, and you've got to learn over the time to have a very thick skin with editors. But you do come to appreciate them a lot. I also use a lot of pre-readers, a group of people that I've developed over the years, to read the manuscripts before they're done and to tell me I didn't understand that, or what is this for, or whatever. So there's a whole process that writers go through, and I'm no different than most. The editing and rewriting aspects of it are as much a part of writing a book as anything else. The first manuscript a writer gives to their publisher is not what gets published by any stretch of the imagination. It goes through 3 or 4 editing iterations and the like. So that's the process. Really addresses the concern you raised of how do you cull out all this stuff you have in your head and put it into a book that's readable and enjoyable.
Yeah.
That's a huge challenge, but you do it with help. You do it with the help of others. You can't. Many times you can't. I could not write a novel by myself without people being critical of it and editing it and changing it, because I wouldn't. I don't. It's your creation. So it's like you can't. It's like a child. You can't decide, what part of your child you're going to lop off. You've got to, it's yours. So you need the help to do that, and help makes it work.
Yeah, absolutely agree. But the question also is then, how much influence does the editor have or should have on your work, on your labor of love? Because some authors said, yeah, I changed editor because, what they said and what they recommended led to the point where I no longer recognized my characters or my book.
I whether it's intentional, that's the question I haven't been asked before, but I don't know if it's intentional on my part or not. But I welcome editing that talks about plot lines and understanding things, but don't mess with my people. Don't mess with my characters because again, I do the miniature biographies of them and I try to give them some real dimension in life and be as real as I can make them. So I'm going to have to ask this question of my editors because mess with my characters and I'm going to cut your head off. You're going to be the next dead person in my next book. But in terms of the rest of it, and the idea of editing to me as a writer is that their greatest assistance is giving you story flow so that the reader wants to continue to read on it. They don't get bogged down in detail or whatever that you think is important that they don't. So, but on the other hand, you do resist your editors. I think it is a bit of a battle, and it should be.
Mm.
Because if you have pride in your work, you need to defend it. And that's in many ways what the editors are asking you to do is to defend your work. It's almost like you're going and getting a PhD and you have to go oral exam and defend your treatise. Well, that's kind of the same thing. And if a writer enters the editing process with the idea that without being, defensive, but defending their work, I think they end up with a better product in the end that they can proudly say, yeah, it's still mine. I listened to you. I made the changes and everything else, but it's still mine because my name's on that cover. So, I don't mean to sound ridiculous, but your integrity is at stake. So you wouldn't want somebody to say to you, why did you change that character so much? Where did that come from? Or whatever it is. And when you write books in series, when you write 3 or more in a series, that becomes a challenge because you don't want the character to remain just static.
Yeah.
You want the character to change and develop or whatever, but you've got to be very careful that you don't solely make a 180 with the character where they, become, just not who they were. Readers are going to catch that in a minute and they're just not going to buy it.
Mm. I also enjoyed the other characters in your book, especially Chris's counterparts in his department, who enjoy a lot of black humor, strange humor. And the question also is, where did they come from?
Good friends of mine are police officers, and nobody in the world has a stranger sense of humor than police officers. I mean, because they live in the dark parts of life.
Yeah.
So they develop humor as part of their way of dealing with the darker side of life. So you gotta if you if you ever know any and you're hanging out with them, you better be ready for some humor that's going to be a little off the wall that you might not think is so funny, but they think is hilarious. So what I try to do in those characters, having known so many police officers, throughout my life and growing up and everything, that's kind of the way they are. They're irreverent. They've got a dark sense of humor, and at the same time, they're very suspicious. They tend to not believe anything you tell them because they've been lied to so often. So it's a whole. I try to keep true to what a police officer, in my experience anyway, in the dozens that I've known over the years, that's what they are.
I can imagine it's a little bit like surgeons, I suppose.
Exactly, precisely, exactly, and there's always that there's also the issue that I don't get too deep into in these 2 books, but there's that in the surgeon area there's what they call the God complex where they think that they're almost like God.
Yeah.
Some police officers have that same complex that they just believe that whatever they think is the rule, and I'm getting into that a little bit on 3rd in the series now. I'm writing. But that's another complex that's very interesting about people who live in dark worlds or dangerous worlds or highly stressed worlds like surgeons or police officers or folks like that or career soldiers and the like. They develop a different kind of a personality. It's almost a defensive personality that requires them to have a superiority complex in order to cope with the dark sides of things that they have to deal with. So I'm trying to explore that a bit in my next book.
Is there also the danger, I wonder, you call it a God complex, and you're probably right after speaking with other authors and about their experience in their day jobs. Is there also the danger in jobs like a police officer or even a lawyer where people think they are maybe a bit above the law, or the law should be applied differently than from, your average human being?
Well, I practiced law now for almost 50 years and represented every ilk of character that you can probably imagine that we won't go into. But it is absolutely true that there are differences in the way the law treats people. The same thing, same circumstance. There's a lot of variations. When you're dealing with, you know, individual personalities, they clash sometimes. They don't. Sometimes you get a prosecutor who's empathetic. So other times you get a prosecutor who's just aggressive. Sometimes you get someone in a contract negotiation who is benevolent. Sometimes you get a person in a contract negotiation who is just narcissistic, whatever. And so you over the course of my career, I got to deal with all of that. And the challenge always was to try to find a place that it was good for everybody involved. I had a law professor, and this maybe gives it a little context. I had a law professor who had us all sitting in the classroom one afternoon, and he said, "Okay, you're sitting in a conference room, and you're on one side of the conference table, and the person who hired you is sitting beside you, and on the other side of the conference table is the other person with whom your client is negotiating a deal, and the lawyer that person hired is on sitting beside them in this conference. So picture this conference room, lawyer and the individual lawyer, individual on either side. The professor's question was, how many clients are in the room? So we kind of looked and well, somebody raised their hand and said, one, my client, because that's the only person I care about. This is wrong. So another kid raises his hand and he says, two. There's the one on one side of the table and the other. Wrong. So we're looking at him like totally not understanding what he's talking about. And he says, there's three clients in the room. There's the client who hired you, the client who hired the other lawyer, and there's the deal. Because the reason those two other clients are in the room is to do that deal. And if you lose sight of the fact that you're there to represent that deal as much as you do the person who is paying you, you'll lose sight of what the right resolution of the situation is. So in whether it's police work or whether it's lawyer work or whatever, you need to always keep a sight on what is to be accomplished here. What is the purpose of accomplishing? What am I trying to accomplish? And that is the focus, as opposed to going into the corner and seeing it as a battle, seeing it as a, whatever you want to call it. So that's kind of a psychology of people who are in a judgment arena where they're going to judge whether you're guilty or not. They're going to judge whether I should do a deal with you or not, judge whether whatever, that they tend to lose the fact that justice is what's and I talk about that a little bit in Shakespeare Killer. In the end of the book, we talk about what is justice. And that kind of is the philosophy that I'm expressing now, and in terms of how you look at situations that way.
Yeah. So in essence, you can't lose the sight of the bigger picture. Avoid tunnel vision and keep also the bigger picture in focus. Yeah. And may I ask, as a writer, what is it you enjoy the most when you write? Say, do you enjoy writing descriptions as much as dialogue, or both? What is it? Is it that makes you flow?
Yeah, in the writing process, this is in my case, it comes in fits and starts. I'll write for a week, then I won't write for 2 weeks, and I'll write for 5 days, whatever. It's when I get that spark. When I get the spark, when I'm hitting a wall, I can't get through it. There's something that I'm missing. When I get that, and it comes in the middle of the night, quite often, in whatever, my wife tells the story that, at 3:00 in the morning, I get up and I start to write because the idea came to me somewhere when my brain really relaxes. It'll perk up with the idea. Those moments, those writing moments when you get an adrenaline rush, when all the ideas suddenly coalesces in your head and you're able to sit down and just whip out, dialogue and descriptions, and it's cathartic. Those are the moments in writing that I most enjoy, because that's where I really feel that my creative, juices are let loose. Sometimes the stuff that comes out is garbage, but quite often it'll lead to something else. But it's those moments of sort of creative revelation that you get that I think, for me anyway, is the most enjoyable part of writing.
And one guest said he always thought, it's nonsense when people say, there is this character looking over your shoulder. And he realized when he wrote his book, it is true. It was for him maybe too metaphysical, but would you agree it happens?
Oh, yeah, definitely. No question about it. So, yeah. In fact, I think there's a whole host of people behind me. Let me know. Yeah. And including my characters. Sometimes, this is going to sound like I'm nuts, or maybe I am, but I have conversations with my characters
It's not
in the
nuts.
middle of the night. And so I'll have a conversation with Chris DiMeglio, with Carla, and all the other characters that I have in there. And so, yeah, because in my mind, I realize that they're looking at me. They're depending on me to tell their story. So writers are, we're kind of weird in that way. Is we want to tell a story and everything else, but we do have an affection and a desire to be truthful to our character.
Mm.
I mean, because we're creating them. They're our family.
Mm.
So, writers, I think, take a certain amount of real pride in that creation and they're looking over their shoulder. Absolutely.
Mm. And given that you write thrillers, sometimes there is the question of, is it the plot? Is it the characters? Is it both in the same measure? What would you say? What drives the story? What drives the book?
Yeah. For me, it's very much the characters.
Mm.
I mean, I love thriller books, and for example, one of my favorite authors is Ludlum. But his characters would never survive the fights they're in if it was real life. And the same thing as James Bond. I mean, I love reading that stuff. It's great. So anyway, in terms of, I love Ludlum and I love, Ian Fleming, but their characters are out of this world. They wouldn't survive the fights or the things. So my character, what I try to write when I do a thriller, I want a character who's believable, who someone could say, okay, they're lucky or they're good or they're whatever. They can survive a fight, whatever it happens to them.
Yeah.
But that's real. It has a sense of reality too. So first and foremost, I want to have my characters to be real. And in terms of the scenes and the plots, I also want those to be plausible.
Mm.
I like to call it plausible fiction.
Mm.
So that when someone reads my books, they come away going, I know that's fiction, but that could really happen that way. I mean, that's not out of this question about having some level of reality to it. So it's really what I call plausible fiction. I want my characters to be plausible, the events to be plausible, so that the reader sort of feels that that's fiction, but plausible fiction.
What I liked about the book as well was the fact that at the end of the story, which I do not want to give away, of course, is the fact that the FBI isn't coming at the suspect's home, guns drawn and, rushing in, and just they have a civil conversation. It felt more European than it felt American. Don't get me wrong, I do not want to offend anyone, but it was the feeling.
It's interesting you make that point, because if you talk to FBI agents, and I've talked to many, the vast majority of what they do in their day-to-day lives is simple conversations with people. What you see on TV where they're with their SWAT teams and they're barging in and stuff, that rarely, if ever, happens. And part of the criticism the FBI has received of late is that they're allowing that to be used for political purposes, to make political statements, which is sort of one of the subplots in The Shakespeare Killer, and in Blood in the Bayou. But you're right that the only difference here that people, and I don't really, this is a good question. You've given me a research project here to do, but in the United States, if the FBI knocks on your door and comes in and says, "Hey, Edith, how you doing? What did you do last week?" and you lie to them, whether you're under oath or not, if you lie to them, that's a crime in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to warn you. They don't have to do anything. You don't have to be a suspect. But if you lie to the FBI, that's a crime. Now, I don't know if that's true in terms of Interpol or local authorities, and I imagine it differs from country to country. But many people think that you have to be given your so-called Miranda rights here in the United States before you can, anything you say can be used against you. That's not the truth. That's not true. That's only if you're a suspect. If you're not a suspect and you're being questioned by the FBI and legitimately not a suspect, and you then lie to them and that leads to other issues, you've committed a crime. So the FBI would much rather have conversations with you than they would to storm down your door. If they storm down your door, then they're going to give you Miranda warnings. You're going to be able to get a lawyer. You're going to all that stuff. So they're not going to learn a lot in criminal investigation. So, contrary to popular belief, police officers in criminal investigations, the last resort is to knock down your door. They'd rather get you to talk to them before they believe you're a suspect, although there's a gray area there. But they'd rather have you talk and get comfortable. Mm. And that's kind of one of the things that profilers do, the FBI profilers do with their suspects, is try to get them comfortable. Mm. And try to get them to talk to them, try to empathize with them, try to, give them a false sense of friendship or whatever you want to call it, because psychologists will tell you that even the most heinous of individuals, if they feel that there's an empathy between them and their investigator, they'll open up more and give more clues, that kind of thing. So, I love your observation, though. The idea is, the perception is that in many times, at least in the States in particular, that it's a bunch of SWAT teams and guns drawn and, and all this kind of stuff going on, when that's a very, very small part of true criminal investigations here, as is obviously in Europe. But we tend to, the Americans tend to love to see the guns and violence more than they like the other stuff. So, the news media feeds them exactly what they want. So that's what they see.
Yeah, but there's also this appreciation in the United States for European crime fiction, not just in books, but also in TV shows. Do you think that's the reason? Because there is too much,
Yeah, that's really an interesting question, because obviously I watch a lot of, crime programs, and BritBox is a streaming service here in the States. It's primarily British, British shows, and there's a lot of crime shows on it. And now that you mention it, the British crime shows have very little violence. They're more about the investigation, they're more about relationship, more about whatever you want to call it. Whereas I don't think you can find a single U.S. crime show that somebody doesn't get shot, whatever. I mean, there's got to be a dead body. There's got to be a shot person. There's got to be a fist fight. There's got to be a car chase. There's got to be whatever, that sort of feeds that. But you're right. The European shows, and I've really only watched most of the ones from Great Britain. But I suspect it's the same in the other countries, that they're more dramatic, more creative in the sense of investigations and facts and intrigue and, double dealing and, Europe invented, you go back to Shakespeare, for example, in particular. I mean, he's one of the greatest authors about, your best friend stabbing you in the back, that kind of stuff. So that's a very European kind of thing. Yeah. In the United States, your best friend's going to pull out his gun and shoot you in the face. I mean, you can have a gun, go down to the gunfight corral or whatever it is, that kind of double dealing stuff is very European in its historical sense. And whereas it's not so much here. So yeah, actually your question really has me thinking hard about this. It's a really fascinating distinction that I hadn't thought about too much, but I'm going to have to look into that.
Because the fact is, now that you mentioned the UK, of course, police officers don't carry guns, don't carry weapons.
Yeah, and here, again, we could get into a crazy discussion in the United States about guns, but I live in North Carolina. I moved here about 3 years ago, and you can buy a gun. I can go out and buy a gun if I have a driver's license, but I have to carry it so everybody can see it if I want to carry it. I can put it in my house, but if I want to carry it, it's got to be out open. If I don't want people to see it, and I want to have what they call a concealed carry permit, I have to take a 6-hour course. So that's all it takes for me to walk around with a hidden weapon on my body. And you can get into the philosophical issues of whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. But the net effect of that is that in North Carolina and many other states, there are so many guns in so many hands that it is really mind-boggling how much there is. If you go into a gun shop in the United States, it's like going into a jewelry store, and I'm not joking. There are counters and counters of cases, of glass cases, with hundreds of different guns you can buy. It's a gun culture. All the hype you see and the publicity you see about what a gun culture we are is absolutely true. That's not hyped at all. It's real. And that's a very different, totally different culture than Europe. Yeah. It's like, it's opposite.
Yeah.
That's sort of where I create I used a little bit of that in Shakespeare Killer and the conflict between who wanted a gun and who didn't want a gun and what they were going to do with that gun. and different philosophies on it. Yeah, no, that distinction is very, very different. And then the bobbies in London, they don't carry guns; they have clubs.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Exactly. And even the detective inspectors and so on, neither do they.
yep,
I mean, our police officers do have guns, but
and they're
you
the
know,
ones in Italy.
yeah, but how often do they draw them? Mhm. Very rarely.
They yeah, exactly. No, it's a completely different. I don't want to get into politics by any stretch of imagination, but again, there's a gun culture here that creeps into entertainment, into novels, into the publicity. You name it. It's
Mm,
a part of our society that is very, very deep. That is not the case in Europe.
mm, true. And politics aside, you mentioned you live in North Carolina now. Is North Carolina a particular fertile ground for writers? Because we have spoken to lots of writers from North Carolina.
Yeah, it's kind of right in the middle of the East Coast, so it doesn't have the harsh weather one way or the other. It's physically beautiful. It's got mountains and beaches and rivers, and I mean, it's kind of not it's not Walden Pond by any stretch of imagination, but it's just a very calm, a very friendly place. The North Carolinians are very friendly people, and they're not politically, one way. They're what we call purple.
Mhm.
They're sort of moderate in their views and stuff. There are some what we call rednecks here in North Carolina, but they're not many, and it just fosters education. North Carolina has a lot of incredible universities here.
Mm.
That's part of the reason I think why there's such a creativity here. There's also a big film studio. The Hollywood East is in Wilmington, North Carolina,
Oh.
where major motion pictures are filmed all the time. And the reason for that is the North Carolina countryside offers movie producers every kind of outdoor set they can imagine.
Mm.
So there's a big, big creative community here in between the young college, universities that are all over North Carolina and the film production industry that's huge here. So it's just a creative community in general, young creative community in general, that I think fosters a lot of that. But you're right. There are a lot of, I mean, I wrote many of my books up in the New York metropolitan area, and there's nothing inspiring about that area from a writer's perspective. Trust me. But sitting here when I'm writing, I'll sit on, and just look. I overlook from where I live. I overlook a forest and a lake, and just sitting here writing. It's just it's there's a good and a bad to it. One thing, it's very relaxing and inspirational. The other thing, it's very relaxing, so you tend to lose track of time. You're just staring at the whatever is a little longer than you need to. But so it may be the negative side, maybe that takes you a little longer to get the words down. But no, I'm not surprised. North Carolina, interestingly, the South,
Hmm.
the South and the Southern United States is the sort of the fountainhead of many, many great writers.
Hmm.
And I think maybe it's the lifestyle and the weather and the countryside. And, people are, they joke about how, they're slower in terms of, they don't react as quickly, or maybe but they just have a better perspective. In one way, one of the things I used to always love about my travels throughout Europe in particular, and this I think has a sense of it's a sense of history where Europeans tend to be far more relaxed with situations because they have a sense of their history goes back thousands of years. Ours goes back 300 years, say. So the cowboy philosophy that you often see in transactions coming out of the United States, whereas Europeans and Asians will sit and to the mop, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, okay, okay. And I remember a lesson I learned early as a lawyer. I went to a session, a negotiation in in Japan, a contract negotiation in Japan, and I were negotiating away, and our Japanese counterpart was saying yes, yes, yes many times. I left that negotiation with the experienced lawyer, and I said to him, "Wow, you did really great." He goes, "No, we did terrible." And I said, "What do you mean you did terrible?" They were saying yes all the time. He goes, "Yes, don't you? They don't have no in their vocabulary, so we learned nothing." But because they have a much better sense of timing and patience and everything else. We Americans don't have patience.
Hmm.
So we learn a lot at least I learned a lot in my travels of the wisdom of the patience of Europeans and the patience of Asians that doesn't exist here. But that's, I got a little bit of that in the book with the characters that work with DiMeglio.
I suppose you are right, because you have a different viewpoint. If you have such a long history, you get more relaxed and you realize what is important then, other than, this fast. And maybe that's also the reason why the southern states of the United States are different from the north. Like you said, more relaxed.
They are.
Different outlook.
Right. Because they're agricultural. In the evolution of the United States, there was very, very little industry in the Southeast, and it was more agricultural. There's a lot of checkered past and some bad things in it too, but
True.
but it wasn't a bustling sort of industrial move ahead kind of thing. So I think that's part of the historical perspective you have it in. It's just a more relaxed place. The South is far more relaxed than any other part of the United States.
Yeah, and as a farmer, you have to learn to be patient.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, so maybe
it was the rice fields, the cotton fields, the sugarcane fields, the fruit fields. I mean, all of the in the earlier days, all of those crops came out of the South.
Then you have to learn to be patient. Now that leads me to another question, Douglas. What would be your advice for any other aspiring author?
I guess I started writing after I was 50, so I waited way too long because I had my day job. I had another part of my life and they were very important things that I needed to pay attention to: family and job and clients and the right. But if I were looking back on it, I regret that I didn't start earlier, because I knew I wanted to do it, and not finding the time to sit there and just do it was a mistake on my part. If I had to live my life over again, I would have started doing this earlier. So my advice to folks is, I've met many, many people who say, I think I have an idea for a novel, or whatever it is. I encourage them, just sit down and write. Just write something. Start. Take that first moment and put your whatever your inspiration is. I don't care whether it's a poem, a short story, a novel, an essay, whatever. Take that first step and then get a little discipline to it. And before long, you'll find that it's got some incredible pluses in terms of, your self-esteem and how you feel about being creative. There's nothing more exhilarating to me than when I'm all done with a book and my publisher sends me the first copy, that I'm holding in my hand something that I created. I've done $1 billion deals as a lawyer, and I don't get anywhere near the same rush out of doing those deals that I do feeling that I've created something that's a legacy that'll, sit in libraries long after I'm gone. And my ancestors perhaps will wonder what grandpa or great grandpa was like, and decide that's what motivates me. It motivates me because I finally took the time. There's so many people that have the ideas and have the motivation, but they don't force themselves to take the time. So my advice is, take the time. You got an idea, just start writing. Just start.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And can you a little bit elaborate on your plans? Because you've touched a little bit upon them at the beginning of our conversation, but what can we, as your fans, look forward to?
Well, the next, I write two genres of books. I write business books as well. And I've got a business book coming out next month that would bore the living daylights out of you. So you don't want to worry about that one. But the third in the series with Chris DiMeglio is the title is Deadly Bites, BYTES. So that'll leave that a little bit to your imagination what that means. But it's about a serial killer and his hunt of this serial killer. I tend to, just to sort of pique the curiosity of potentially my readers out there, I don't write a fourth in a series. So this is the last in the series of this particular deal. So, because I as a writer, I find that when there are writers, and there are tons and tons of writers who are a lot better than I am, but the writers that keep with the same character over and over again, I lose it after a while. And I can't, I mean, as a writer, after a third one, it's as if I go, what else is this person going to do? I mean, I can't think of another variation for this. I mean, it's the same thing. So it's about a serial killer called Deadly Bites, and it's the last in the series. So hopefully that'll pique some curiosity and folks will want to read it.
I'm very certain of that. Rest assured.
Thank you.
So, Douglas, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
No, I just, as I say, I try to write plausible fiction. My biggest rush is when someone says that they enjoyed the book sitting on the beach, and I'm not looking for a Pulitzer Prize. I'm looking to entertain people and give them a moment to sort of lose track of what's around them, and maybe, at least in my books, get some enjoyment out of watching, a thriller and bad people die and good people live. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit of a strict philosophy, but what the hell? It makes for a good read, maybe.
Absolutely. I would say mission accomplished.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Douglas, thank you very much for joining me and for this wonderful conversation. It was an absolute pleasure.
Been fantastic.
Thank you. You did enjoy this episode as much as we did? Then hit subscribe and don't miss the next episode. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you like to support us and buy us a coffee, you can do so via Buy Me a Coffee and other platforms. You can find all the necessary links in the description. Until next time.